What's going on, everyone? This is Jordan with Conquer Trading and Investing. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're not, welcome back. We're going to be live streaming today the Bitcoin conference over here, the keynote between Jack Dorsey, CEO of Block, and Michael Saylor, CEO of MicroStrategy. By the way, MicroStrategy on the bid today, buying another 660 Bitcoins. Let's take a look over here. Justin saying that Bitcoin is breaking out as we speak. Let's jump over to it and take a look. Boom. Bitcoin on the break here this morning. Love to see it. Jumping down out here to the 2-hour time frame. Thank you so much. May God bless you too. So happy to be here with all of you this morning. We're getting ready to go live in just a couple of minutes. Just wanted to check what's going on. So Bitcoin right now into the resistance. Bitcoin is into a massive. Let's take a look at this resistance that it's in. Over here, this is since the November high. Towards the end of December, we had another touch of this current dotted line over here. This has been providing resistance ever since. And a break above, guess what? All these moves happen on trendline breaks. Whether you're talking about from up here, from down over here, you could down. This is something that you have to pay attention to. Now, we have a lot of overhead resistance right above us. You know, even a break above this trend line, whether you're connecting it all the way to the top over here, a break above this trend line sends us into resistance between that 41 and let's call it $42,500 range. Clearing above this green line over here that connects the April high and then over here the September high. You can see after it was broken, it was then providing resistance once in January, another touch in January, getting above there, and we should see some further continuation out. But until then, we are right now in a strong downtrend and we are trading into resistance. This is the point here. If the buyers want to go ahead and take it any further and start pushing the shorts to start covering, we got to get this above $40,000, and then potentially that short covering and further buying could take us into the big breakout above $42,500. So right now, Bitcoin trading into resistance on the verge of a potential breakout. We're going to see if Michael and Jack are able to push it above. So let's see. How do I get to this live? We got, they say they're live now. Let's see 1 second, all right? Is it Bitcoin is hope? No, let's go live now. Perfect timing.
Well, welcome to Bitcoin for Corporations. I'm Michael Saylor. I'm the CEO of MicroStrategy. I have the honor to interview Jack Dorsey, my idol. This is going to be very, very exciting for me. I think Jack needs no introduction, but I'll introduce him anyway. I think Jack has been an instrumental leader in technology, both at Twitter and at Square, that's now Block. And Jack has been an inspirational leader in the Bitcoin community as well. And this is Jack's first interview in many, many months. And so I'm happy he chose to join us today. So Jack, welcome.
Thank you, Michael. And just to start, I just want to thank you. And I'm very grateful in how consistent your advocacy of Bitcoin has been, not only in speech, but in action. And the clarity you bring to the space, demystifying not only the technology, but what it means in terms of societal impact is very unique and very clarifying for so many. So thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks. It's easy to support something which you feel so passionately about that's doing good for the world. Although I feel underdressed right now, Jack. I've got the wrong T-shirt on. What are you wearing?
I got the right T-shirt. I got the Lightning Labs is selling swag now, and of course they're selling it via Lightning, so you can go to their store and buy a T-shirt. So I got the Satoshi Nirvana shirt, my favorite band, my favorite pseudonym together.
Okay, I want a Satoshi T-shirt for Lightning.
Exactly.
It's going to spread fast. Okay, so today our agenda is to talk about Bitcoin strategy. We've got a lot of companies that are tuned in with us, probably institutional investors, probably industry analysts, and the topic is Bitcoin for corporations. A lot of the content in the space is about either Bitcoin, the technology, or Bitcoin is the asset, or Bitcoin is an investment, or economic discussions or political discussions. And what we wanted to do today and tomorrow is just talk about how Bitcoin can enhance your corporate performance. You can grow your company, grow your revenues, grow your cash flows, build shareholder value, right? We say Bitcoin fixes everything, right? And one thing that I think Bitcoin can fix is Bitcoin can fix a company, make it better. And your extraordinary example of success in this area. So I have an interview in 3 parts. My first part is, what does Bitcoin mean to the world? And my second part of the interview is, what does Bitcoin mean to Block? And the third part of my interview is, what does Bitcoin mean to corporations everywhere in the world? And what's the advice you might dispense to a company that's considering Bitcoin? So without further ado, why don't we start with the first question? In your opinion, what's Bitcoin mean to the world?
Well, I mean, a lot of us probably started with Bitcoin out of curiosity, and it led us to a path where we started questioning more and more around how the world works and doesn't work, and what are some of the greatest solutions to the problems that we're all facing, that we're all seeing. Obviously, there's the currency aspect, which I'm extremely passionate about. Having a the internet having a native currency onto its own, that isn't dictated by decisions in Washington, D.C. that end up affecting people in the middle of Nigeria, which by its very virtue is not fair. But more than anything else, for me, it was a reminder of the early internet that I grew up on. It is extremely principled. It's open source. Its workings are transparent. There's no single leader. The creator removed themselves from the equation fairly early on. The development model and the execution and operations has been consistent and unchallenged, and more than anything else, transparent. So the biggest thing that I think it means for the world is there is a way of building for the internet, building for the world, that is trusted, that is open, that is inclusive of anyone who wants to participate. We don't typically see that in the corporate world that we tend to live in and that I tend to live in. So it gave me a lot of lessons, a lot of reminders of why the internet is so important, and what we can do to ensure that people coming into intersection with this technology, that they trust it, and that if they have an idea that would make it better or make it more accessible, make it more secure, protect it even more, they can contribute. So there's so many lessons, but I think the internet having a native currency for itself opens so many doors, especially for internet companies, technology companies, but more importantly for everyday people, activists, people who have questions in the world, people who have curiosity, and more, recognizing that the current systems, whether they be the corporate financial systems or the government financial systems, just aren't working for them, and it's time to opt out of them and opt into something that is open, transparent, and for everyone.
So the words ringing through my head are egalitarian and utilitarian technology.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, but and the most important thing is you can see it. You can see how it was built. You can see the instructions with which it's built. You can see how it runs. You can see the past history of disagreements and how resilient it's been to attacks, both political, government, individual, greed. It's resisted and been resilient to nearly every attack, and there are more to come. but I have no doubt that the model itself, the development model, the operational model, will solve the problems it faces better than any other development model I've seen in my lifetime.
I think that makes it true, and it makes it ethical. From a legal point of view, interestingly enough, all of those characteristics qualify it as property and not a security. And if it didn't have those characteristics, it would flip to a different legal category.
Mm-hmm.
I was impressed by the block size wars when the small blockers won. And I didn't really understand the significance of it when I got into this space, but now I understand that if the big blockers had won, then the integrity of the protocol wouldn't have been maintained untarnished for the entire 12, 13 years. And that was a very important outcome, I think.
Yeah, the noble incentives of the network persisted. And the most amazing thing to me is that Satoshi didn't have to be there for that to happen. It encouraged enough thinking and questioning and curiosity that it went on and on in terms of mindset to all the developers that worked so hard during those times, and all the node operators, all the people who are using it, people that hold it, and also miners making the realization that this is the right path. And this, it's another validation point of what we're all trying to build just by participating in it.
It's kind of like the ultimate open free market in a way too, because everyone can engage and no one can prevent you.
Yeah, nothing is hidden. And in the Bitcoin community, as you know, there's this saying which is "don't trust, verify," and that's pretty much the ethos that has been consistent throughout my experience of it. And I think it speaks of, again, questioning, curiosity, but more importantly, doing the work to verify outcomes and verify the right outcomes. And the fact that Bitcoin's source and operations is all open and transparent, accessible to anyone, is a significant advantage that you just don't see in any other models. And especially for something as critical as money. Like, money touches every single person on this planet. Exchange of value as a concept touches every single person on the planet. Usually it's associated with a very negative feeling. We hate it. Sometimes we love it in very rare cases. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we just don't understand it. We can't trust it because it's hidden behind government barriers or corporate barriers that now are being challenged completely.
It's extraordinary, right? Satoshi gave such a gift to the world, right? What are the odds that you would engineer something like this, release it into the world, have it take hold, and then the founders walk away and leave it as a gift to humanity?
Incredible. And we fixate a lot on Satoshi, and I have nothing but gratitude for whoever this person is, but there's so much work that went into that to get to that moment as well, to get to what Satoshi was able to do. There's a whole background of engineering and science and experimentation and testing to get us to this point. So we constantly, like, the spirit of this is what's most interesting, and the fact that the spirit maintains and grows. And I would just characterize that the spirit is like this questioning curiosity and doing the work to figure out the answers that keeps going back into the code base, and it keeps going back into the operations. So everyone benefits from that. Everyone can learn something from Bitcoin, even if you don't like it as a monetary system, as an asset. If you hate it, there's some lesson there that applies to anything that you currently do in the world, guaranteed.
Yeah, I'm stunned by this idea of humanity cooperating with the best intentions in a fair, ethical way in order to engineer a better future. And how often do you see that?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so on that subject, that's a great segue. Let's talk about Bitcoin and Block. What does Bitcoin mean to Block? Tell me about your products, the markets you serve, and the strategy that you're pursuing with regard to Bitcoin at Block.
Yeah, just a little history here to provide context for why Bitcoin has become important to us. So we started it was called Square. We just recently changed our name. We started Square we had the idea around end of 2008, and started in earnest building a prototype in 2009, January, which is around the same time that a lot of energy in the financial industry was happening. You had Stripe start, you had the Bitcoin white paper, and Satoshi working to the point to release the code and the Genesis block. All during that time, you had the end of this massive bank failure and just so much greed and corruption on display, which was never held accountable for, and we still live with today. So it was a very interesting time for finance or financial technology. There was just a lot of energy happening, and we happened to recognize a problem, which was, more and more of the US was moving to paying with plastic card. And this is great for individuals because it's convenient. There's a lot of negatives, obviously, with the credit card industry, but the convenience and the speed was amazing. The problem was the sellers could not accept credit cards. And when we first thought about this, we just thought, okay, we're building a credit card reader for small sellers to use. We didn't realize that was just the tip of the iceberg. The real issue was that these folks were being denied from the merchant acquirer, from the bank itself, to even accepting credit cards because outdated technologies to vet them. And so there was a flower cart underneath my apartment where we started the company, and she got denied 3 times to accept credit cards. And that meant she had to stay with cash. And that meant every single time someone didn't have cash and tried to pay with a credit card, she lost the sale. So we realized in the first 6 months, it wasn't about accepting a credit card. It wasn't about building credit card hardware. It was about helping a seller make the sale. That was it. Participate in the economy. And that's how our company grew, is how do we build tools to enable people to simply participate in the economy? And if we can do that, then how do we help them grow and thrive in the economy as well? So we started with Square on the credit card reader. We built the point of sale because it helped them make decisions. We started lending people money so they could buy a new salon chair, so they could double their business. We created this thing that we wanted to use, Cash App, to transfer money because we had the money rails now. We did it in a very innovative way by forcing the money through a refund onto a debit card. So it was instantaneous, and anyone with a debit card could utilize it. And we actually tried to integrate Bitcoin in 2014. We enabled any buyer on our online stores for our sellers to pay with Bitcoin. We saw very, very few transactions, so it didn't really go anywhere. But we took it up again in earnest with Cash App because we found a vehicle that actually made sense. We started with a very simple model of exchange and buy and sell. We initially, when I first worked on the Hack Week project with a guy named Mike Brock, we had it so that I could store Bitcoin in my Cash App account and then pay with a cash card, and it would auto convert to the merchant into fiat. But we thought it more important to have some sort of psychological break on it. So actually selling it, indicating that I want to pay in fiat was far better than just blindly selling or blindly spending a Bitcoin at the time, especially because transaction fees were quite low. And we did all this in Cash App when we were a newly public company, about a year into being public, maybe a year and a half. We were the first public company to talk with the SEC about Bitcoin and what it meant for us and what it meant for the world. It challenged absolutely everything. It challenged our security protocols. It challenged legal compliance, engineering, product, everything. And even if the product flopped, even if Bitcoin did nothing for Cash App, I'm so grateful that we did it because we learned so much about who we were and who we are and what we're capable of, because it was an immense amount of work in a very short time frame with significant challenges. So since then, we've continued to pull the thread. We're looking for opportunities to help sellers. We have a lot of sellers on Cash App as well, so they're already utilizing it in some ways, especially as we just integrated Lightning into Cash App. We acquired a music company called Tidal. We acquired it because we didn't believe that artists were getting the right tools to participate in the economy in the same way that sellers weren't getting the right tools to participate in the economy. There's a lot there. You look at everything happening in NFTs, the spirit of it in terms of answering the questions about how artists get paid, there's something there. The manifestation and the implementation, I think, is completely wrong at the moment. We created a open source unit called Spiral, 5, 6, 7 open source individuals who don't get block stock. We pay them in Bitcoin. They get to work on whatever they want as long as they're making they're advancing Bitcoin, they're protecting Bitcoin, they're making it stronger. And they created a development kit called Lightning LDK, or Lightning Development Kit LDK, which allows wallets all over the world to easily integrate Lightning without having to think too much about it. Cash App uses it. It was one of my proudest moments. We started this open source entity as a company, knowing full well that we would probably never get anything back from it. That was not our desire. We had no idea what they were going to do. And in just 2 years, one of our biggest businesses is using what they created. So I think it's a fantastic lesson in terms of doing more open source as corporations. And then finally, we have a new organization called TBD, which is a platform for Bitcoin, specifically a distributed exchange to enable more and more people around the world to get into Bitcoin in a way that the current models don't really allow for. It's still very hard if you're outside the US, Europe, to get Bitcoin, to get onto the network, to participate in the first place. So TBD will be building a distributed exchange that makes it easy for developers to build exchanges all over the world and create on-ramps from fiat into Bitcoin. And once people are on Bitcoin, then we have so many tools to empower people more into the economy.
So yeah, I get the sense like the theme here is financial inclusion. It didn't quite register with me many years ago, but I suppose if you're a small business, an individual, you're kind of unbanked. If you can't take the credit card, the first unbanked were small, mid-sized entrepreneurs everywhere in the world, including even in the US. And what you're doing at Square is you're kind of plugging them into the traditional conventional banking system, right? Via, the credit card and the like.
100%. And now they weren't just being excluded, like only 40% of merchants who applied would get through. We took that number up to 99%. But once they got into the traditional merchant acquirer, there's all this obscurity of information. So the acquirer would not show them how much they'd be paying in credit card fees because it varies depending on the card that the individual uses. So what would happen, we talked to all these merchants where the companies would come in, take their credit card fees in and cause in, that they had not enough money because they run razor thin in their checking accounts. It would cause an overdraft. Then they have no money and suddenly they're hit with a $500 overdraft fee. So like just the obscurity of information was criminal. So we solved the problem of getting more people in and then solved the obscurity of information problem so that they could make more informed decisions around how to grow their business, how to survive in the first place, but to grow their business.
So they're struggling to implement their own back office payment systems. They're struggling to get on the credit card network. They're getting hit with fees from the conventional banking system. Yeah. And Square is giving them a stack of software solutions and services to help them get into the network and then manage their business and avoid being victimized as the weakest player in the ecosystem.
100%.
So with regard to that, tell me about your thoughts about Bitcoin and Square as a strategy. Is there any way that you can grow Square, improve the product offering, or offer benefits or opportunities for small businesses via Bitcoin?
Well, I just going back to that native currency for the internet. Like Twitter is very much an internet company where we could create a website or we could create an app and make it available everywhere. Anyone in the world who finds it can use it. Companies like Square and Stripe are not really internet companies, because for us to exist in a market, we need to have a local relationship with a bank. We need to pay attention to the differences in local regulatory environment. So we have to go by, this market by market by market approach. It took us 9 months to launch in the United States because of this conversation with the banks and the networks and whatnot.
How many different markets are there that, from a compliance point of view, that you have to consider?
All of them. I mean, all of them are different. The European Union changes slightly, but like opening up in Ireland is completely different from opening up in Spain, which Square just did. So, each one of these markets, we have to do this market by market. It took us 2 years for Australia, over 1.5 years for Japan. So the issue is that all these markets have different systems. They have different ways of doing things, different currencies, different models. And they all have some degree of obscurity of information as well, which makes development much, much harder. If Bitcoin existed, when we started was at mass, and we can launch something like Cash App, utilizing Bitcoin and Lightning as the transport mechanism, we can be in every single app store around the world today. So it really speeds up our time to market. It speeds up how we can build more tools on top of the network, on top of the foundation, to add even more value to our customers if they find it valuable. So like, it really changes it for us. Like if this does become more and more of a means of transport of money and energy and time, then we get to move much faster. We get to open more markets faster. We get to see Square and Cash App and Tidal in more places. And we can be more like an internet company. And even, if Bitcoin existed before Twitter started, I think we would see completely different business models. I don't think we would be as dependent upon an advertising business model. I think there would be a much healthier balance on multiple business models at once, instead of this over dependence upon one. I think we'd see a lot less of the issues that advertising systems can bring up in terms of privacy and everything we're seeing around surveillance capitalism as well. So the fact that the internet didn't have this mode of transport and didn't have this protocol and didn't have this currency, forced into very traditional models that became massive at scale and then can become quite dangerous at scale as well. So I'm very excited to see the new models that emerge, because we now have Bitcoin, and we're now the closest we've ever been to a native currency for the internet, which to me like changes everything.
So TCP/IP is like the universal digital information protocol, and that caused all these internet companies to be able to deploy their services everywhere on Earth simultaneously without jumping through compliance hoops and having armies of lawyers, right?
100%.
But you see Bitcoin / Lightning as like universal monetary protocol.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and probably beyond that. I mean, there was a time early in Bitcoin's history when there was less of a focus on Bitcoin as a currency aspect and just as that transport, and more on blockchain technology. Blockchain technology is amazing, but the network's power is what people do with it, and the use cases. And the use case for the internet to have something like this is, I think, as fundamental as TCP/IP or HTTP, SMNP, which is a mail protocol. So these open protocols create companies, they create projects, they create entirely new cultural and societal shifts that I think ultimately lead to more trust and more transparency as time goes on, and diminishment of all these barriers and boundaries that we've erected in the past.
So, if I'm a small business and the benefit of building the Lightning / Bitcoin monetary protocol into the small business applications at Square would be potentially you could roll out services worldwide simultaneously. And second, everybody wouldn't have to route their transactions through credit cards and individual banks, which then terminate at a central bank in each nation, which means that all the small businesses could trade with each other, I suppose, everywhere in the world. So it's like the fees get driven down by a factor of 1,000. The world trades with each other, and then it would create maybe an acceleration in product development because you don't have to rebuild the feature set 97 times and run it through some complicated compliance review and then negotiate with a bunch of counterparties. Is that right? Am I being
100%? I think the biggest point in what you just said of what is so important is all that is transparent. I can see the fees that Bitcoin imposes on me, and I can determine why they're at that particular amount, why they're high, why they're low, based on what's happening within the network. So that level of transparency builds a lot more trust. It also builds intent and incentive to make the network even more efficient. What causes greater efficiencies, or make it even more secure? How do we add protections or anonymity or privacy? So all these things being transparent clearly display the problems, whereas in the typical financial industry, and especially corporate finance, those tools, they're all in a black box. You can't see anything. You can't see how they work. You can't see how they're priced. And I think that goes such a far way in terms of usage over time. Knowing a system is definitely a great incentive to wanting to use it more and more because you trust it more and more.
So I guess I sense a theme here with if sellers were excluded from the economy and Square's application services, empowered them. Is the idea behind Tidal to empower artists to participate in the economy and give them control of their own destiny in the same way?
100%. Like we on the surface, it looks like a financial company bought a music streaming company. And what's interesting about Tidal is that Jay and the team have always been focused from an artist perspective, from a musician's perspective, and the lack of fairness in the model right now. So Tidal pays out more than anyone else, but we're also doing things that kind of question the fundamentals of how artists have been paid in the past. But certainly there's no gap in streaming music or podcast today. You have three massive players, Amazon, Apple, and Spotify. We don't have any, strong hope that we're going to compete on that ground. What we do think there's an open space around is artist tools, and how they create, how they collaborate, how they find each other, how they participate not only in the economy but also in the music space. So a typical artist today does not get that much from streaming revenue. They get the majority from merchandise and touring, and Square has commerce sites. We can integrate those right into Tidal, make it easy for an artist to start one up immediately, but also make sure that they are open and free to, be consumed and listened to on every other single platform out there. There's also a lot within just the streaming use case and the format that is interesting. This is where I think the spirit of NFTs, that there's something, it's the right question to ask. We currently have the wrong answers. The question around contribution to artists, that particular question is interesting and definitely the right one to ask, and one we're asking a lot, but to do so on a much better foundation. And I think, we're what's exciting to me is we talk so much around layer one Bitcoin. We talk a little bit around layer two and Lightning, but there are layers on top of that as well. And this is a foundation that can be utilized for so much exchange of value. It doesn't have to be purely limited to what we consider it to be today. So I'm really excited about, those. I don't know if they're who can define what a layer 3 or layer 2 is at the moment, but there's something else there on top of these fundamentals that I think allows us to re-envision something like how an artist gets paid and how they connect with their fans, and what that relationship ultimately is. And there's some very specific practical problems in there that we're working on right now.
Is it like an extraordinary passion in the world today to own yourself? The artists want to own themselves, and that's driving NFTs, and the musicians want to own themselves. And can you give me some autonomy or some sovereignty versus big tech or versus big finance? And how can I live my life and create beautiful things and be fairly compensated? And so I think Square and Tidal tap into that. Now talk about layer 3s. I think the big layer 3, maybe the most successful layer 3 on Bitcoin, is Cash App. When I think about it, let's talk about Cash App, because it's an extraordinary success. I mean, haven't you sold more than $10 billion worth of Bitcoin through Cash App? Tell me about Cash App and Bitcoin, and also the Lightning integration, and what you've learned, what you've seen, what your plans are there.
Yeah. Cash App is I think for anyone in a company, there's always these moments when you have to be prepared to lose credibility, and you do so by taking risks that you believe in. So Cash App was something that everyone in the company at the time we started it didn't think we should be doing, including one of our former colleagues who works at PayPal. So that problem has been solved, and peer-to-peer transfer will never win. And we wanted it so much that we continue to build it. And for 4 years, 3 or 4 years, it was just a very hard slog where the company wanted to kill it. We weren't seeing much traction in the market, but and every one of those days I went on, I was losing credibility, which I was hyper aware of, defending this thing. And I, eventually, the team found a model and made it work, and they unlocked it. And some of these things just need time and space. And the same is true for when we put Bitcoin into Cash App. It was another one of those, okay, I'm ready to lose a bunch of credibility. No one believes in this thing. No one believes it should be in Cash App. Some people think we're being either reckless or irresponsible with the world if we integrate this, and all those moments kind of add up, but you power through, and you see it through, and the market responds in a particular way. And the market responded with Cash App, because I think the magic of it is it's not just about one thing. It's, if I have a need to send money to my friends or my family, I can use Cash App. If I have a need to buy Bitcoin, I can use Cash App. If I want a card that I can use anywhere at ATM, I can use Cash App. If I want to buy stocks, I can use Cash App. So our model is around this ecosystem. Like, how do we build an ecosystem of financial tools that positively reinforce one another? And Bitcoin is a big part of that. And the team within Cash App, the Bitcoin team within Cash App, is extremely principled and focus on education and focus on doing things the right way, and not rushing things and not doing things too soon, but making sure that there's desire for it and need and necessity, and then seeing it through. And we've seen all that with our implementation of Bitcoin and Cash App, and we're excited to do even more. And what excites me the most is we're challenging ourselves. We're challenging even the Cash App model. So we announced that we're building a Bitcoin wallet, hardware wallet, which is non-custodial. Cash App is obviously a custodial wallet. I think custodial wallets and services like Cash App are great to start with, but again, to your point, like, people want more of that feeling that they own it uniquely. That that goes into a non-custodial solution. And we're building this thing in such a way that we'll have this incredible off-ramp from Cash App into something that just works as a non-custodial solution as well. And most importantly, we've learned from Bitcoin. We're open sourcing the whole thing, including the industrial design, so that anyone can build whatever we discover and find out. And we're going to compete on quality and compete on build and compete on services around it that I think are valuable, like, different models of security, potentially, where you don't have to do as much key management is one such model. But there's others, obviously, including around analytics and whatnot. So I think we're striking the right balance of starting with something that is critical and then kind of expanding in a way that gets at what the technology actually wants to be ultimately. And we learned all that through Cash App and Bitcoin.
How many people use Cash App? Like, what's the silhouette of that product?
Oh, we have a earnings coming up soon, so
I'll tune in for that.
Listen to those numbers then.
Okay, a lot, right?
A lot.
So you've got a custodial wallet, and I can buy stocks, and I can acquire cash, and I can acquire Bitcoin, and it's super slick and super easy to use. And I use it. I think it's just awesome. It's kind of sets the standard for how you ought to do a really good mobile digital wallet. The difference here is you're thinking you're going to give people the ability to take their Bitcoin and take it off the Cash App network and take self-custody. And that's something that's not going to happen anytime soon with your Apple stock or any kind of security, right? I mean, maybe, I don't know, in theory, anything's possible, but I don't see it happening anytime soon, maybe ever. I don't know. And even if you did, what would it mean to take personal custody of a stock certificate? You still just own a share in somebody else's company. You don't own your own property.
Exactly.
And so really the deep idea here is, I guess, Cash App is kind of the on-ramp, off-ramp, or the tool for the consumer, and then they can get self-sovereignty of their own property.
Yeah, and it's about choice. Like I might feel more comfortable paying a company like Cash App, which is effectively what you're doing. You're paying Cash App to secure your Bitcoin, and that comes at some cost and trade-off. Or I might feel comfortable putting my Bitcoin into a wallet and I secure it, and I'm confident in my abilities to do so. Or I use a service to help me with that, key management. So I think the more choice, the better. And certainly we're going to learn a ton. The more choice we give people in terms of where we're failing, if people choose to move it off Cash App, and why they might keep the Bitcoin in Cash App. Why is that? Maybe it's because of Lightning. Maybe it's because the world becomes more transactional with Bitcoin, and therefore Cash App is like the easiest, fastest way to exchange that value. I don't know yet, but we're going to be open to answering those questions in a principled way.
And the ability to take possession of your own property, your own digital property like Bitcoin, is what separates Bitcoin apart from most other digital securities and the like. But your openness to being willing to let people take self-custody is what gives the entire ecosystem a certain ethical, moral superiority against alternative investments or alternative assets. And from my point of view, it's what allows me to think out 100 years and think this has the ethical, the ethical and the moral superiority that makes it durable for a century. And I don't feel that way about other forms of digital securities or the like.
Exactly. It's predictable. It's deliberate and it's predictable. I mean, Bitcoin gets a lot of knocks, especially in the mainstream media, the technology mainstream media, versus Ethereum in terms of speed of development. Ethereum moves very, very fast in comparison. But it's a question of, what is the ultimate outcome of those moves? Bitcoin is very deliberate about what goes in and what stays out. And that does mean it's slower, but those slower things tend to last, and they tend to be a whole lot more predictable in terms of the direction they're going. They tend to be a lot more secure. They tend to have far better uptime and usability than anything else. And that's not to say that there's a ton of great ideas in the sandbox everywhere and happening in all these other projects. They're great sandboxes that will test ideas very, very quickly. But that deliberateness is what makes Bitcoin, to me, the potential for this internet's native currency, and gives so much confidence as a business owner, as someone running one of these companies, that it's going to stick around, and it's going to serve billions of people throughout decades going forward.
Yeah, you can have lots of innovation at layer 2 with projects that compete against Lightning, or layer 3 with applications that compete against Cash App. But I don't have to speculate about who's going to inherit the Block Corporation in 100 years. If I do business with you now, I have the option to take my level 3 assets to a layer 2 to a layer 1 and give them to my grandchildren. And that makes all the difference, I think.
The focus should always be on the protocol and owning in some way the protocol.
So let's talk about speed then. Lightning. Lightning's an open, permissionless, non-custodial, high-speed protocol. Bitcoin is a similar sort of a low-speed, durable protocol. How important is Lightning? How do you view Lightning versus your, Cash App has a proprietary layer 3 way of moving Bitcoin around, and then you've got experience with Lightning. No one's more qualified to opine on the benefits of centralized versus decentralized payments than you.
When we started Square, one of the things that we found was every time we demoed the product, I took out my phone, I put the reader on the headphone jack, and I swiped someone's credit card, they would say, "Wow." And that wow was like the speed, like how did you just do that? It felt like magic. That's kind of the feeling you have when you do your first Lightning transaction for something real, whether it be a digital good or a physical good, which is happening. These physical goods accepting Lightning is just happening more and more. And it's not necessarily, certainly the speed is a big part of it, but just the fact that, for instance, I just fired up a miner in my house, an ant miner in my house, and it's just chugging away, and it's sending all this Bitcoin to Slush Pool, which then sends it to my Moon wallet, and then I can take my Moon wallet and I can go out and I can buy a taco. And just the fact that I was able to do that is incredible.
Big smile.
It's a wow moment.
Smile to your face.
It's like, wow, it changes everything. I mean, it literally changes everything. And that didn't go through a bank. That didn't go through a government. That went from a hugely complex but self-regulated calculation and solving of a puzzle to an open network, open protocol that I could see every single part right to the hands of a seller. That's amazing. So I think Lightning makes Bitcoin even more accessible, especially to smaller sellers. It certainly makes it more convenient to individuals because they don't have to wait for a transaction time that is 8 to 10 minutes. And we're getting an opportunity to see a grand experiment at scale in El Salvador, where you have a closed loop economy effectively. And I think we're going to learn a lot from that, to better Lightning, to better Bitcoin, and to better this concept of this open monetary system. And I think those lessons will be very important as we continue to scale this around the world. That famous William Gibson quote, "The future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed." There's probably a big part of the future happening in El Salvador right now that's not evenly distributed around the world, and little by little it will be. It may not be the manifestation that we see right now, but the spirit of it is probably going to rhyme with what we see in other countries and certainly in the future. So Lightning and Cash App is just another one of those iterations that allow more people to use it, make it more convenient for more people, and that just increases the accessibility of the network and what we're all trying to do.
Yeah, you've got the Lightning SDK to make that available to corporations. Do you think Lightning is going to spread to all the other crypto exchanges or digital wallets or the like, or how do you see that playing out?
I think it goes back to like Bitcoin is very like practical and utilitarian. So if it makes sense from a utility perspective, absolutely. We just wanted to increase the probability that people could integrate it. And that's what the LDK is. It's just increasing the probability that if I need Lightning, I can do it very quickly. And I imagine the answer is 100% yes, like it spreads everywhere, but the probability of it spreading before LDK was quite low because of the complexity of integrating Lightning in the first place. So team did an amazing job.
Do you use your own product in Cash App to put Lightning into Cash App?
Oh yeah, 100%.
That was probably the big thing, right? I mean,
well,
that's
I mean,
such a strong.
The big thing was like we started this, like I asked my colleague Mike, like, what is the biggest thing that we can do for the Bitcoin community? He said, hire and pay 5 open source developers to work entirely on Bitcoin, whatever they want. We did it. We called it Square Crypto, and it's now called Spiral. And they decided, this guy named Steve Lee hired a team, and we even said, like, if you all want to work on 5 different projects, do that. They decided to work on one project, which is this Lightning development kit. And within 2 years, they had it out to multiple wallets, made it available, and wallets started adopting it. But what's even more, what makes me proud is, like, as Square, as Block, we were never expecting to utilize anything from them. Like, if we did, amazing. But within 2 years, Cash App was built on their framework, which was completely open source and not directed by the company, not directed by a corporation, and we benefited so massively from it. So if there are any companies out there that are considering funding open source, whether it be an internal team like we did, or just the projects that you appreciate, definitely do it. Like, have some amount of your portfolio dedicated to funding open source development.
So let's move on to the last topic, Bitcoin for corporations and your advice. What kind of advice would you have for a corporation thinking about plugging Bitcoin into their business, and what kind of opportunities do you see?
I think for, even if you don't use or don't believe you could use Bitcoin in your company, I think it's worth your study, because there's a number of lessons in it that will make your company better. How you operate your company, how you interact with the world, how you think, how you execute. I've just learned so much from it that have made everything about my company and what we do much better. And, you know, if I were to start another company, those lessons would just be so great. So, and then, you know, as we talked about, like, Bitcoin is very utilitarian and practical. You don't necessarily have to build anything into your products or services that are Bitcoin oriented, unless you feel that there's a need or there's an efficiency or something that is going to be helped. But it certainly has many, it solves many problems in very different ways. I mean, you are famous, Michael, for solving one of your problems in a very specific way in terms of buying more and more Bitcoin based on a problem that you saw, and a very creative solution in what Bitcoin provided you as that solution, as that answer. And I think that was brilliant. I think it's genius. And certainly that's one path for many companies watching this. And there's another path in terms of what we've done at Block. We're a financial company. We're building financial tools. There's obvious intersections. There's something like Twitter, which has a base of people using it that are global, that need that, you know, for us to enable something like tipping all around the world, they need a global understanding, shared understanding and awareness of one currency. So it makes sense. It's small today, of course, but it'll grow because the use case is there and it's important. So I would just look critically at your business and what can you learn from Bitcoin? Number one, that would make your business better. I think there's a ton. And are there any practical applications within either purchasing it or building it into your products or utilizing it or providing services for it, which I think is the real value going forward, especially for financially oriented companies of the services around the Bitcoin ecosystem. I think there's a ton of potential there.
If you look at fintech and social media companies over the next 3 to 5 years, do you have any thoughts or a forecast for how rapidly they'll get involved in Bitcoin, or to what degree they might?
Well, I mean, look at, I obviously I don't know Facebook / Meta's plans, but look at this whole thing with Libra and then Diem. I think there's a ton of lessons in. They tried to create a currency that was owned by Facebook, probably for the right reasons, probably for noble reasons, but there are also some reasons that would indicate trying to get more and more people into the Facebook ecosystem. And they did that instead of using an open protocol and standard like Bitcoin. And I think, hopefully they learned a lot, but I think there was a lot of wasted effort and time when those 2 years or 3 years or however long it's been could have been spent making Bitcoin more accessible for more people around the world, which would also benefit their messenger product and Instagram and WhatsApp and all these things. We have this open network right now, and it's usable. It's not accessible to everyone. It's usable. The easier we make it, the faster we make it, the more approachable we make it. It's going to better everything, including everything that Facebook intended to do with Libra. So, yeah, I mean, I think it changes a lot, but we just have to be open to not having to own the thing. You don't got to own it to get value from it.
So the real message is study the protocol, understand the protocol, embrace an open, permissionless global protocol. You built a bunch of proprietary applications on top, like Cash App, that were enormously successful. They've been great for the company, but you also leave an open protocol, and you're supporting the open protocol so people can take possession and you can be compatible.
Yeah, and giving back to it, like making sure all of our products, all of our Bitcoin products going forward, TBD, the Bitcoin miner we're doing, the Bitcoin wallet we're doing, they're all open source. They're all going to be made in public because we've learned. I've learned a lot leading a company and building a company, and I've learned a ton for Bitcoin, and we're hard forking down to the Bitcoin path.
Awesome. Look, I want to thank you on behalf of everybody in the Bitcoin community, and thanks for sharing your wisdom with us today. You have any final last words for the group?
Well, I mean, anything you learn from Bitcoin or at this conference, I mean, we only get better as we share it. So get active within your companies, get active within your communities, share your ideas. No question or ideas is dumb. Some of them have been asked before, but there's always new angles and insights that we can learn from. So the more conversation about this, the better, especially the things that you're afraid of, because it allows us to address those things in a much more thorough way.
Yeah, well, I leave this conversation with just new source of energy, and I'm thinking about what a beautiful future we have here if we all work together.
Yeah, we do.
Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you all.
Okay, thanks to everybody, and all the best.
What a close. Thanks to everyone and all the best. Michael Saylor, though, on the bid once again, $37,000 and change Bitcoin, $25 million purchase. We got Dave Let His Hands Portney also making another $1 million purchase of Bitcoin. He bought Bitcoin. It was like what, $10,000-$11,000. I think it was right around then. He then sold. Anyway, he's back in the game. That's for sure. We're going to be watching or looking at Lynn Alden's interview on the MicroStrategy conference, which is coming up, I think, at 3:00 p.m. Eastern time. Let's take a quick check of that just to make sure. I'll go back live for that and make sure I stream that. I want to hear Lynn and Lynn's thoughts. And let's check the time over here together. We got boom, boom, boom. Where is our girl, Lynn? Let's try Bitcoin February 1st. And then we could see over here, we have at 3:00 p.m. Lynn Alden talking with Michael Saylor. I think Lynn's going to be a more, let's say like charismatic in her delivery. But I'm looking forward to her thoughts about what's going on as far as the current economic, regulatory, political, technical outlook for Bitcoin. That's going to be a good one to watch together. Looking at the charts right now, Bitcoin into resistance. Bitcoin into resistance. We have been following this downward sloping correction in Bitcoin now ever since November. Looking for a potential breakout as we test that resistance. If we break below this green line below, let me just go ahead and get that out for you. If we break below that green line, consider that a rejection. And at that point, the sellers will have the opportunity to see what they could do with the ball. If you see it if even breaking above, by the way, breaking outside of this resistance, right? You still have some problems, or I should say some further resistance above you. It's where this circle is between this 41,000 and 42 or almost $43,000. All of that will be the last stance. That's where the sellers, if they want to actually put up a fight, that's the time for them to do it. Bitcoin will be overbought into that area. And the sellers, if they're going to put up a fight, that's the time to do it. If Bitcoin is able to actually squeeze what sellers are out there, the buyers are able to squeeze it and close above where that yellow circle is, close above that line. At that point, we could potentially see a big shift in momentum. Again, if you just view it out, these trend line breaks are important. You got to pay attention to them as and when they happen. And most importantly, right now is very uncertain times. Right now, you want to err on the side of caution. Everyone has their Bitcoin position. Everyone has built up their Bitcoin position. Michael Saylor, right? He's got this giant company bringing in that revenue, keeps on the bid, no problem. Right now, whether you want to be accumulating Bitcoin or building up a cash position, that's something to really think about. We're going to talk about the macro strongly tomorrow inside CTM. Right now, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back on over here. We'll be back in 2 hours for Lynn Alden's live stream event. So everyone, right now, have a beautiful day. I'll talk to you soon.